Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're descending straight into the dark, paradoxical streets of the uncanny valley. We've got a highly restricted, incredibly ominous psychological dossier to translate for you, and honestly, it reads exactly like a grim, dark, gothic fable. We're going to open case file archetype 07, the Night of Memory, and decode the terminal state of a human psyche that has been totally consumed by Nietzschean intellectual despair. Let's get into it.
Here is our clinical index for today's investigation. We'll start with case file archetype 07, move into the parable of the empty grail, examine the shackles of silver debt, explore stasis in the uncanny valley, and finally, deliver the violet verdict.
All right, part 1, case file archetype 07, the corrupted architect.
So our subject is known in the clinical texts as das Dämonische, or the Shadow Sovereign. But here's the twist. He actually adopts the mask of the Pale Redeemer. Operating deep within a domain called the Iron Threshold, his primary mechanism is the mirror of gravity. Now, philologically speaking, to be an architect is to be a master builder, right? But this entity looks out at the blank canvas of a godless universe, and instead of painting a new dawn, he uses that freedom to forge a leaden prison. He becomes a warden of his very own making.
And as a warden, he absolutely despises the spirit of becoming. In Nietzschean terms, the spirit is the reckless freedom and fluid potential of the human psyche. It's the will to create, to evolve, to perform that joyful grave dance over old dogmas in pursuit of the Übermensch. But the knight, he demands perfect stillness. He uses his domain to actively punish that vital, life-affirming fluidity, locking the spirit away in the dark.
That brings us to section 2, the parable of the empty grail. We have to journey to the very center of this inverted metropolis, to the Iron Threshold itself. This is the gate guarded by the knight, where all seekers hope to find ultimate meaning. But the knight's philosophy hits like a ton of bricks. He teaches that in a universe where, as Nietzsche put it, God is murdered, there is absolutely no external nectar left to quench the spirit's thirst. The path to the Grail is always empty. Now, instead of using this emptiness as a triumphant call to forge your own meaning, he completely weaponizes the void. He turns it into a tool of intellectual despair. He whispers to travelers that seeking is just a dangerous fever. By showing them this empty vessel, he convinces them to trade their reckless freedom for cold, absolute security. The result? He renders the living psyche entirely frozen and subservient to his sanctuary. It's an absolutely terrifying manipulation of nihilism.
Moving to section 3. What we call the parable of the silver debt.
To enforce his reign, the knight acts as an intellectual salvager. He practices this dark alchemy where he smelts the gold of stories into the heavy lead of mortality, utilizing a mechanism called silver guilt. It's crucial to ask yourself here, are you hoarding your own silver guilt? Are you living in a state where every single hard-won victory of your soul is recorded not as a triumph, but as an unpayable debt to the ghosts of ancient moral structures?
He enforces all of this through iron laws. These are rigid internal rules designed to make sure the psyche remains a mere monument to permanence. Driven by intellectual resentment, that deep-seated resentment of one's own past and weakness, he literally weights the feet of the spirit with the silver of its own history. And because of this, the spirit can never move forward. It can never perform that grave dance. It just stays forever trapped in a museum of its own guilt. Let's plunge into section 4. Stasis in the uncanny valley.
This brings us to the parable of the frozen breath. This is the clinical, practical application of his mirror of gravity. You see, to the knight, a living moment is far too fluid and unpredictable, so he exhales the breath of the void. First, he siphons the warmth of ambition. Second, he extinguishes the living moment entirely. And third, he entombs it as static dust within a leaden box. He preaches that to truly own a living dream, you have to kill it. Why? Because only in a state of complete spiritual entropy can a thing be held forever without the risk of change.
This spatial philosophy is perfectly captured in the parable of the inverted spire. In the bizarre geography of the valley, the knight reveals that going up, the pursuit of higher social ideals, is actually a heavy, gravity-driven descent into the mud of the herd. He brilliantly mocks Nietzsche's last men, the ones who huddled together seeking warmth and mediocrity. Conversely, going down into the abyss is actually the dizzying, terrifying climb toward true individual sovereignty.
But make no mistake, his path into the lightless deep is a complete trap. He offers a gilded cage of absolute truths, tricking the traveler into believing that the only way to survive this dizzying descent is to put on the protective armor of absolute stasis.
He basically reframes paralysis as the ultimate form of mountain climbing. He whispers, "Just stop moving entirely, and you'll be safe from the fall." Which brings us to our final act, Section 5, the parable of the self-devouring judge and the violet verdict.
When this grim, dark fable reaches its horrific conclusion, the violet gavel strikes, completely shattering memory, reason, and will. The executioner is suddenly forced to face his own internal gods. The knight is left bearing this unbearable crimson burden of self-judgment, utterly unable to escape the very laws of gravity and guilt he so mercilessly imposed on everyone else. So he devolves. Evolving backward from the pale Redeemer, he mutates into the man-beast. He becomes a crimson sentinel, forever stalking the stagnant mud of the vacant throne. He's no longer just a warden. He has become the ultimate victim of his own cynicism. He is utterly incapable of enduring the deafening silence of that godless universe he weaponized in the first place.
And here we find his terminal state, entombed in a living leathern box, lit only by the red glow of his own predatory eyes. He realizes, way too late, that by murdering the spirit of becoming in others, by demanding that perfect frozen stillness, he has permanently locked himself inside his own leaden prison. The architect of spiritual entropy becomes its very last prisoner.
As we close this highly restricted case file on Archetype 07, you have to confront the shadows of your own psyche. Are you crushing your own spirit of becoming under the weight of your past? Are you letting the night of memory forge your vibrant, living mind into a frozen monument of permanence, just so you can feel safe? Take a really hard look at your own iron laws and your own silver debts. Don't let the grail of your own potential remain empty.